Good morning, friends. I welcome you to yet another cognitively fueled session of your induction Ignite 2020. I'm Professor Arpit Trivedi, your event host and moderator. Let me take you through the process of how we'll conduct the webinar today. Our guest will address the batch for 1 hour. First 50 minutes will be knowledge sharing, and last 10 minutes will be question and answers. Students are encouraged to put relevant to the topic questions in the chat box. It is my great pleasure to introduce our notable speaker of the day, Mr. Anand Halbe. Sir is an experienced high-tech industry veteran with a successful track record in creating new markets, new business opportunities, developing and introducing best-in-class processes and methods to accelerate growth for SMEs in high-tech space. In his illustrious career, Sir has been associated with leading technology companies such as Sun Microsystems, Motorola, TCS America, to name a few. Anand Sir's multifunctional experience include in diverse geographies such as United States of America, India, Asia Pacific, and Africa. After his long and successful stint in the US, Sir returned to India in 2008. Since then, Sir has co-founded and nurtured a predictive analytics startup, Nuvis Analytics. The company focuses on developing statistical engines for helping executives take decisions on issues involving complex data quickly and accurately. Using both statistical modeling and algorithms, Nuvis provides customized solutions for verticals like FMCG, financial services, telecom, entertainment, retail, auto industries, etc. By education, Anand Sir holds MBA degree and Masters in Economics from the University of Pune. Now, I would request Sir to open the session for our students. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you, Arpit. And welcome to all my young friends. I wish I could see you all because that always makes interactions that much more complete. But I guess we are all working in different times. So webinar is the way to do it. And so here we are. So before I start, I would like to just do a bit of administrative processes. I would like to thank IIEBM, Dr. Jay Marwa, and his entire team of Dr. Poonam Nikam, Dr. Nalavde, and last but not the least, Dr. Arpit Trivedi. I think this institute has, my experience with this institute directly has been through this webinar. And I can only say that I've been very, very impressed with the professionalism with which they have gone about doing this. So I'm sure all of you young students of the 21st batch, as you interact more with the institute, I think you will gain a lot of insights. So without much ado, let me get into what I wanted to say for all of you this morning. I'm not able to see my slide deck. Can I? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So the subject that we chose together was related to what I've been doing myself over the last 35, 38 years. I've really had a very good exposure to the world beyond India. In the introductions, Dr. Arpit Trivedi had already given you an insight. But I thought it would be really relevant to talk to all of you as you enter your MBA program. In the next 2 years, you will be ready to look for opportunities. And I just wanted to give you some kind of an insight on what high-tech offers both in India and beyond. So having said that, I thought I'll lay out the land on how I'm going to be talking to you today. What can you expect from me? So what I thought we needed to do, because you meet so many speakers every day, I wanted to set a few assumptions on which I've made this presentation to you. These assumptions then I will move into a context, because I think every presentation that you hear, you need to have a context. And why is the speaker saying what he's doing? What is the background of the speaker, and so on. And then we'll move into the real crunch of what this talk is all about. And there I want to really begin by giving you some definitions. The reason why definitions are important is because amongst many people in India, particularly, what is high tech? What constitutes high tech? How do you define it? What are the boundaries of high tech versus anything else? I think it's important for young students like yourselves to know this. So I will spend very little time on trying to give you these definitions and what are the opportunities that come out of these definitions. And then we'll get into what you really probably want to hear, or what are the possibilities. Now, I've been given a full hour, and I felt that while I should share some knowledge of my experience with all of you, I thought the Q&A session, which is the final piece, should be really the real crunch of it, because that is where a lot of meat will come. So I'm hoping that all of you will ask enough questions, and I hope I can answer them. If I can't answer them, then we'll find ways and means of getting you these answers through your institute. So without much ado, let me get in. So let me get into a context. Oh, well, I guess I jumped it. So here are my assumptions on which I'm making this entire presentation. Number one, I'm addressing students of the 21st batch. I've noticed that the number of attendees are a fairly large team, and I'm really encouraged by all of you giving your time and being here. You are at the start of a 2-year journey. I think there are a lot of things that you will learn once you come to the institute. Hopefully, COVID will allow you to do that, because I think you have a wonderful campus, a wonderful faculty, and a wonderful city which has the history of being the Oxford of the East. So, as and when you are able to actually come down to in person classes, you really gain a lot. Uh, I have studied the background of the batch, and I understand that while there are engineers and there are people with science backgrounds, the predominant faculty that dominates in the batch are students who are coming in from a commerce background. Now, there are reasons why I've made these assumptions, and I'm restating them because you will see it in the next slide. I also understand from your professors that the group that I'm talking to is in their early 20s and with limited or no work experience. Now, that is a strength, and that is sometimes a liability. Not much of a liability, but it's always, having some work experience under your belt sometimes makes a difference. Sometimes it creates baggage. So you can work both ways. But the group here that we are talking to is a group which has limited work experience or no work experience. I'm, of course, making an assumption, and I don't think that's a wrong assumption, that all of you are extremely comfortable in written and spoken English. So, having said that, let me move on to the context. Well, you can read the slide. Why was the assumptions important? This sets the stage for all the comments that I make in the rest of the session. I'm also focusing on opportunities that present themselves to people with background like yourselves. I'm not making assumptions on any opportunities where your backgrounds are not relevant. So I would like to really state that as a preamble as we go forward. What is the context? Now, Arpit very kindly gave me a very warm introduction, said a lot of good things. But really, what I wanted to do was I wanted to start the reverse. I wanted to start from the bottom of the slide rather than top of the slide. What I wanted to share with you is that number one, my background and your background is almost identical when we were at comparable stages of our life. You have a background in commerce predominantly. I came with a background in economics. Now, why did I do an MBA? I realized I needed to do an MBA, and maybe this is a good message for all of you also. Did an MBA because it was critical that as I joined the workforce, I get a great overview of what the real world of business, companies, organizations, different vertical sectors, it is all about. And there is no better way of gaining that when you go through an MBA program. What happens when you're doing commerce or economics or whatever is you focus on the science of the vertical that you're studying. Here, this gives you a fairly decent exposure to the world outside, what to expect, and how does it all work. Now, the other reason why I wanted to start from the reverse is because having a background like a master's in economics and an MBA from a business school in Pune, I spent 35 long years in high tech. There is very often an assumption that high tech is not for everybody. It is meant for people who have a technical background. I just wanted you to be aware that there are enough opportunities, and that's what I will talk about today, in the high tech space, which gives you a chance to not only work in India but work in different parts of the world. I come with a geographical experience of having worked in India. That's where I started. I spent a fair amount of time in Africa. Now you'll say, why Africa? I personally feel that Africa is the next big thing that's going to come up in business. And as all of you start a new career, you will discover that while the US and Asia Pacific and the Middle East will continue to play a major role, Africa will also present a major opportunity. I have gone through multiple experiences in terms of different functional areas. Uh, I've listed them out. General management, which includes having experience in managing a profit and loss for the business I was running. I've done my bit. I've picked up a briefcase and walked the streets. I've actually sold technology products to customers. I personally believe that the only way you can understand your market is when you understand your customer. And the fastest way to understand your customer is to get into a sales job initially. Once you get into a sales job initially, you understand the dynamics not only of the customer's thinking, how does competition look, what is the technology that's making a difference, and so on. Marketing is when you start coming back and start figuring out how to help the salespeople do a better job. Since I live in a community which is predominantly military in Pune, if I was to use analogies, sales is very often what I refer to as the infantry of the business. Marketing is the air force, and things like product marketing and everything else are parts and parcels of what different military organizations have. So I have also, in my experience, like I said, done sales. I've managed products. I've launched businesses. I've built organizations from the start. I've also done consulting. And finally, I've been an entrepreneur and a consultant. So, what I'm really trying to emphasize and why I'm saying that context is not really wanting to brag about my background, but to give all of you students who are listening to me here today that look, backgrounds only make the difference when you get into the job for the first time. After that, you can really chart a career exactly the way you wish by exploiting opportunities as they come your way. We'll talk a little more about that as we go forward. So, as I said, we needed to start with some definitions. And, you know, when your institute and myself, we agreed to speak on high tech. High tech means different things to different people. So, what I decided to do was, since all of you are young students planning your careers, you need to understand that if you are looking at technology businesses, what are the different sectors and what do they mean? And what does it mean to you from a job standpoint? So, there are broadly two sectors that I would really look at, which make up this whole category. One is what is traditionally called high tech. Now, these names, high tech and IT, are names not created by me. These are these are names that are used by the analyst community that studies the different sectors. So, for instance, if you're not looking at high tech at all, and if you were to go in FMCG or you were to go in banking and financial services, you would find that there are analysts who are looking at sectors by defining them in a certain way. Similarly, in the high tech space, high tech sector are companies which are predominantly product focused. Now, in the time when I started my career, product focus would have been restricted to hardware or software. Today, product focus can become a whole series of applications. They can be hardware oriented, software oriented, internet based products, and so on. Let's look at some of the companies that you would be familiar with in terms of names that you have seen. Uh, Product companies are companies like Cisco, Oracle, Google. Google is an extremely good example of an internet based company. There are many others like Google. There is companies like Amazon. I'm sure you all have, if not heard of Amazon as a software or an internet company, you're certainly users of Amazon as a retailer. And they're using the technology of the internet to retail with you. Everybody has heard of Microsoft. So, what makes product focused companies special? The product focused companies are basically companies that are focused on creating IP or intellectual property. Uh, I hope you can hear me. I'm not sure because I can't see myself. I'm not sure whether you can see me or what the situation is. Ah, there we are. I've come back magically.
Sir, we are very much there, sir.
That's very good. I know. I was just wanting to make sure I was not talking into cyberspace.
No, no, sir.
Great. Thank you. So I gave you an idea of what the high tech sector is all about. It are companies which have an IP focus and they generate a lot of value for the business. And typically, high tech companies, compared to the next sector, are companies which, in terms of compared to the revenue, team sizes are much smaller. That's a thumb rule that you can use. Now, when you move to the next sector, is what is called the IT sector. And IT sector companies are companies which are focused on delivering services. Now, services can be a whole range of services. There could be services like developing software, managing infrastructure. What does infrastructure mean? Managing infrastructure, you think of an airline. If you and you all have been in have interacted with the airline, flown in an aeroplane, and so on. You, as a customer of an airline, when you go to the airport, when you first make a booking, you go online. You make a booking, you get your ticket, then you go to the airport. When you go to the airport, you go to the check-in counter, you put your bag in, the bag gets booked for your travel city A to city B, and so on. Now, the bag magically goes on the conveyor belt, goes somewhere, and shows up on your plane, and then magically shows up at the airport, at the airport where you're going to disembark, regardless of how many stops the plane is taking. Now, all this requires IT infrastructure in the background. And that is the infrastructure that I'm referring to. So, delivering of service to manage the infrastructure is what many IT service companies do. Product development can also be done through service delivery. It includes all these familiar names that you're probably familiar with: BPOs. BPO stands for Business Process Outsourcing. KPOs is Knowledge Process Outsourcing. And what the difference between BPOs and knowledge process is, when we talk about knowledge processes, We are talking about organizations that provide legal support. Today, I'm sure you're aware that doctors outsource analysis of x rays, legal firms outsource knowledge of either criminal law or civil law or company law or any other format that is of a specialization. So you have different types of service deliveries, BPOs, KPOs, etc. Now, all of us in India are very, very familiar with companies in the IT sector because they dominate our landscape. TCS or Tata Consultancy Services, Infosys, IBM Global Services. For those living in Pune, everybody will be familiar with a company called Persistent. Now, Persistent is a very interesting thing. It is very different from IBM Global Services, TCS, and Infosys because Persistent is a company which is focused on developing products. So, very often, a company in the high tech sector at the top, let's take a company like Microsoft. Very often, Microsoft says that, hey, I want to develop a project management software. And for a variety of reasons, they say that, look, we will develop this software by outsourcing the development. And that outsourcing could come to a company like Persistent. So you have a high tech sector company like Microsoft working with an IT sector company like Persistent to develop a product that you and I buy with the Microsoft label on it. So you will also find that TCS, all these companies in the IT sector have a very strong Indian presence. Now, why I'm really emphasizing this is because a lot of people in India, when they think about technology or they think about high tech, they really think that it is IT. What I want to emphasize to you is that IT is an important element, but there is high tech as well. And then I wanted to just bring in another two definitions of what you may be aware. And in case you're not aware, you will get aware as you go forward in your careers. Is this concept of on site and onshore, offshore. My apologies, there's a typo there. It is offshore. Now, what typically happens is this means that you're doing some work for a client. Now, you could be working on that project management software product development for Microsoft. You would be working in Pune. You could be also working in the Microsoft headquarters in Seattle on the same project. So it gives you opportunities to work in India and to work abroad. And there are different mechanisms on how this happens. What kind of jobs go abroad? What kind of jobs stay back? So we'll talk about that as we go forward. And if there are any questions in this area, I would be very happy if you were to raise them or mark them off so that we can address them after the presentation is over. So, having defined the different types of companies that exist in the broad high tech space, I wanted to spend some time trying to give you some characteristics of why and what makes the high tech sector different from other sectors that you're familiar with or you're aspiring to join. And I thought nothing could be better than starting with this strange little picture that I have before you on your screens. This is a picture of a bridge that was built not very long ago on a river in Honduras in South America. Now, it's very interesting. The area where this bridge was built was an area which permanently is hit by bad weather, hurricanes, and so on. And so it was the government's decision that they needed to build a bridge to go across this river. The river's name was Choluteca. Now, River Choluteca and this bridge have become legendary for the kind of situation that has got created there. So, in 1998, after this bridge was built by Japanese engineering, extremely rugged, there were roads built to access the bridge from both sides of the river. This area was hit by a major hurricane, Hurricane Mitch, and 75 inches of rain actually came down in this area in a very, very limited time. something like what we are experiencing in a very, very small manner right now in Mumbai in the last 24 to 48 hours. Now, what was the result of this? 7,000 people died. Things got washed away. The time, the time the weather settled down, what they found was exactly what happened here, what you see in this photograph. You had the bridge beautifully constructed, intact, but the approach roads had vanished. And what else had happened? The river had changed its course. So, when the bridge was built, the bridge was actually going across the river. And now, this is the situation. Now, what does it do? Why is this while this phenomena was pretty unique, what does it tell us from a management perspective? That, hey, one of the things you can never do is take anything for granted. You need to be flexible, you need to be able to adapt. And one of the big features of the tech industry is that you need to, when you think about a career in the tech industry, you need to go in with a mantra that you need to be flexible, you need to adapt. And I'll spend a little more time on this before going into the specific job types. Okay? In fact, one of the things that I might encourage you to do is look up the bridge on River Choluteca on the internet. If you go to Google, you will find a lot of stories about this. Why is this that people talk about? So I have not found this out of the blue. It is something I was familiar with. I thought it would be worth sharing with all of you, and it also gives you the real mantra that goes behind it of how important it is to adapt and not be rigid in the way you look at things. So, what are some of the characteristics of the high tech sector? Number one, you will find that not only you as individuals seeking careers in this sector, you will also find that the companies you choose to work with, they have a mantra of innovate or perish. It's a very different kind of an industry. When you think about, if you were to go to a company which makes, let's say, biscuits, you'll be surprised that all of you buy biscuits for various purposes, either to have it with your chai or to buy it for little children in the house, or maybe some guests are coming and you want to have tea to be served along with other things. Now, if you think about biscuits, the technology of the biscuit just does not change. So when you think about a Marie biscuit, the Marie biscuit in 2020 is almost the same as what the Marie biscuit was in 1960 or earlier. If you look at the high tech sector of what was it in 1960 and what was it in 2020, completely different. If you look at what the technologies that are going to drive this sector in 2021 and 22, completely different. If you look down the points, you will find there's this impact of the pandemic. I will come to that. That is an example of how the sector has this challenge of rapidly changing technologies. And the interesting thing is, these technologies don't necessarily have to come from large competitors. That's the nature of this business. So, number one, you must be aware that things change all the time. Now, all of you who are looking for marketing careers and are interested in product management, marketing, and so on, another characteristics of the high tech sector is that products have extremely short product life cycles. Now, what does that mean? Since most of you are reasonably new to the workspace, when you are trying to manage the fortunes of a particular product in the market, if you look at Lifebuoy's the Lifebuoy soap that comes from Hindustan Lever, Lifebuoy has been around from the time I was a child. And that makes it very, very old because that Lifebuoy Sabun was available from the late 50s to now. Even today, you have Lifebuoy. So when you think about the product manager who is working on the Lifebuoy product, he has a history on the way the product has behaved. He knows who his competitors are. He can see them. He can feel them. He can, when he goes into the market or his salesmen go into the market, he can feel the pressure of competition. Here, product life cycles can be much shorter. And when we say short, we talk about 3 years, 5 years, maybe less sometimes. Which is why when you look at and I know all you youngsters use smartphones. Probably some of you are using smartphones to see this presentation. You will find that your smartphone company is giving you a new product virtually every 6 months. Why are they doing this? They're doing this because of the nature of the business. They're doing this because of the nature of the rapid changing technology. They're also doing it because of the rapid changing state of competition. So you will see that this sector, you are permanently on the edge of your seat. A lot of excitement, a lot of fun, but you need to be aware of this change. The other great thing, since you're looking at this from a job standpoint, that jobs in the high-tech sector have immense mobility. You can move from a job. If you're doing a job for a technology company in India, you could move to virtually anywhere in the world. This is not necessarily true in many other sectors. It's certainly not true in advertising. It is certainly not true in businesses like FMCG. So if you are an expert in marketing Lifebuoy soap in India, it doesn't necessarily make you adaptable to working because you do not inherently know the local market, which you have built expertise here. Somehow the high-tech sector has been given this kind of immunity, which is one of the reasons why, if you look at my background, I've been able to work in Africa, work in the United States, work in the Middle East, work in Asia Pacific, and still be comfortable. So that is one thing. Now, I was coming to this bit of the pandemic. One of the things that is happening, and this is really, really very, very recent, pandemic was not, it was known as late as December. I remember it was kind of making the news in China in January and February. But come March, look at the way the world has changed. Come and look at the way you and I are talking to each other. Suddenly, the pandemic has caused everything to look at how they're going to conduct their business, how they're going to conduct their activity completely differently. And you know what's common? The common layer that is behind all this is the deployment of technology to make this happen. Now, what does that mean to all of you? If you are looking at the high-tech sector as a potential area of job opportunity, is that opportunities abound. There are companies, I've known companies. The other day I was on a webinar trying to understand and debate the impact of technology on different sectors of the economy. And it was very interesting how many young companies have shown up in the world of education. And what were they doing in the world of education? They were helping organizations like your institute trying to figure out how to manage the education process, how to manage the examination process, how to manage the tutorial process, and so on in a seamless manner so that you as students and the institute can interact as if they were interacting at the front of each other. Another new product, another new service. Now, the next factor that comes in with high tech sector is your career longevity. What is demanded of you, and this is something has to be highlighted because it's important, you should be comfortable in this world, is if you want a long career in the high tech sector, you must be adaptable in your mindset. You should be willing to learn. So you will find a lot of training and a lot of retraining happening in technology companies all the time. And you should be willing to reinvent yourself. Today, as students, you're learning that already. You were all set to come to Pune, attend classes. Pandemic happened. You're suddenly not able to go into a class. You're suddenly trying to figure out how do you run a class sitting on a computer screen or a smartphone screen. The final differentiator they brought in on the high-tech sector is, is something which is very special to the technology companies. Most companies who are successful, if you look at them, companies tend to work collaboratively with their competitors. So I was telling you, for instance, Microsoft wanting to develop a product with Persistent, or IBM wanting to do something with Microsoft. IBM and Microsoft are competitors in the market. Yet there are enough areas where they need to collaborate. So this is a very unique kind of a thing where businesses compete, they are friends, and they collaborate at the same time. So this does not happen in too many other businesses. When you start studying or when you start meeting other speakers from other sectors, you should ask them this question if they haven't covered this point already, and they'll give you a really interesting insight into what's going on. Okay, so these are some of the characteristics I want you to bear in mind as you think about careers in the high tech sector. Now let's look at what is there for you. What are the areas open to you? So I try to really, differentiate into specific opportunities and what it may or may not be directly applicable to your backgrounds right away. Now, I'm saying not likely, but it is not shut. So I think you must bear in mind that opportunities are what you can chase today. You can certainly go to the right side also, but you require a little bit of, uh, you need a little bit of a background. And I'll give you some interesting examples that will help you understand this. If you look at opportunities clearly, I mean, all of you, whether you're science, engineering, commerce, it doesn't matter. You have opportunities to, I always say go in sales first, because when you go in sales first, you learn the customer, you learn the market, you learn your competition. I did it this way. I spent 3 months in the classroom in the company I joined, and then I was dropped into the middle of a market. And by Jove, if you really want to learn, that's the quickest place. No amount of classroom training teaches you sales the way it is, it teaches you the business the way it is. So the sales, I would strongly recommend. Sales can be of various kinds. It can be direct sales where you, I picked up a briefcase and walked. You will not believe this. I sold computers in the by lanes of Masjid Bandar in Mumbai. And I'm talking about 1980, when Masjid Bandar in Mumbai was had the wholesale steel market, wholesale spice market, wholesale textile market, but they were big users of computers. But you have to go there and figure out what's important for them, and then be able to position your product there. And the positioning of a product is what product marketing is all about. So product marketing is where you build this, you have this wonderful product, you are trying to sell this product to a particular market segment. And market segment does not buy hardware, they buy a solution. So if you are in the business of making trucks, your solutions are different. If you're in the business of making soap, your solutions are different. So one of the big advantages you have when you do an MBA program after all your basic degrees in whatever you've done is it gives you an understanding of what are the different uh, areas that are of importance to a business, and you can then be able to go out, meet customers, and tell them, look, I have a product. It looks similar to what somebody else has, maybe, but it does something that is important to you far better. Now, then we have this concept of what is called field marketing. Now, I've tried to differentiate between field marketing and what I call marketing. Now, what I mean by that is, and this is very typical only of the high tech sector, You will not find this difference in other sectors. What the difference is that field marketing is more often than not, what happens is the company creates a marketing program to help the salespeople sell their products. Now they create the programs, but somebody has to run the program in the field. Field is market territories. So if you're working in India, your head office could be, let us say, now let's just for the moment say it is in Delhi, then the market conditions in Western India are different from the market conditions in Eastern India. They're different from the market conditions in Southern India. So all the marketing programs that corporate marketing is thinking about have to be executed in the field, and that is what field marketing is all about. So there is a huge opportunity for many of you if you're interested in looking at opportunities in field marketing. Similarly, you go back to corporate office, you manage marketing, where you're creating programs, you're creating promotions. You're not executing them from there, you're executing it through the field marketing organization. You're managing PR. PR is public relations. Now, you will find in the technology industry the use of traditional marketing tools, whether it's advertising, digital marketing, promotions. PR is an important element. And the other thing which I haven't mentioned here because I didn't want to confuse the conversation, there is also something called analyst relations. And typically, marketing jobs include all that marketing, PR, and AR. Analysts make a big difference to business in that high tech space. And so there is a need to manage opinion of the media. There's an importance to manage the opinion of the analysts. So another area where you can think of. Now, the next opportunity is in channel management. What is channel management? Today, I'll move away from the tech sector for a moment. I'll go back to my favorite alternate subject that I brought to you. Is let us say you want to buy a biscuit. You go to the closest dukan, which is the shop closest to where you live or where you work, and you go and say, I want to buy a packet of gluco biscuits. Now, the person you buy from is a dukan wala, he could be a chai wala, he could be a cigarette shop. Basically, what he is a part of a channel that is deployed by the manufacturer of the biscuits. So if you work for Britannia Biscuits, Britannia Biscuits is headquartered in Bangalore, but they have channel partners, they have distributors, they have retailers, they have sub retailers, and managing this entire chain of retailers, distributors, etc., is what channel management is all about. Completely open to people with backgrounds similar to yours. Alliance management is different. I told you how the technology industry works differently. You sometimes form an alliance with your competitor. So if you are working for, let us say, Google, or you're working for Microsoft, you are still working a relationship with a company like IBM. Now, when you're in charge of doing that, that is what you're managing is alliance management. So what you're doing in alliance management is trying to get market focus together, where you'll go together, how will you attack the market, how will 1 plus 1 equal 5 and not 1 plus 1 equals 2. That is what alliance management is all about. And once again, it is open to jobs with people like with backgrounds similar to yours. I've done all these jobs in various stages of my career, and so I'm saying this based on been there, done it. I just wanted you to be aware. Now, when you come into the IT sector and you look at companies like IBM, when you look at Infosys or TCS and so on, a lot of them are developing software. Now they go to a customer says, I want you to develop something for me. Now that's where business analysts come because he might want to develop something for the financial sector, let's say for the banking industry. Now, the business analyst role is to understand what the customer wants to do, how he wants to do, what are his specific challenges of security, and so on. And business analysts are the one who convert the customer requirement into a requirement that can be used by the programmers, the developers who are sitting in the back office. People sitting in the back office more often than not do not see the customer themselves. Business analysts do. And they have the ability to convert a requirement into a business system specification. And then the product is developed. Again, business analyst is a role any one of you can do. But for this, you need a good, sound foundations in understanding business, which is why all of you have enrolled for an MBA program, and that is how it will help you. Now, all these opportunities I've spoken about so far are predominantly in what I broadly would call business development side. But technology companies don't have only jobs in business development, they have jobs in finance, they have jobs in HR, they have jobs in inventory control, they have jobs in logistics, they have jobs in uh, purchase. All these jobs can use people with backgrounds like yours. So, in case any of you were having a misconception that high tech is only for the science people or the engineers, I think I've thrown up enough avenues for you to think about. Now let's move to the other side. Engineering, IT support, software development, consulting. Now you will be surprised. When I was working at Sun Microsystems and I was in the US, in the Silicon Valley, I was working with one of the I was doing alliance management with one of the largest software companies in the world. And I had an engineering manager who was working with me. So we became good friends. So one day we were having lunch together, and I asked this gentleman, I said, Bill, tell me one thing. I said, what's your background? You're an engineering guy here. What's your background? You know what his background was? He had done a bachelor's degree in music. And he had moved from music to engineering. I was, to say the least, absolutely floored. I didn't expect this kind of diversity. But that is another feature of the high tech sector. They are not, they are open to any kind of movements as long as you have the desire to learn and deploy your skills. Which is why I said not likely, but not shut. Engineering, IT support. I'll give you another example. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this company called Mindtree Consulting. Mindtree Consulting was probably when it was taken over by L&T. It was a company which was about 150 to 180 million dollars in revenue. Large, about 10,000 people on the payroll. Now, I'm talking about Mindtree specifically because the CEO, the founder CEO of that company we began our careers together learning how to sell computers. And you know what was his background? He is a BA in economics. He did not even have an MBA. And yet, he became the founder CEO of a company like Mindtree Consulting. He was the one who actually set up Wipro's IT technology presence in America. So where is economics and where is technology? But here's a man who did it. So which is why I say nothing is impossible. There are so many case studies to emulate should you want to get into it. So having said that, let me move into my last slide. So I'm saying to you, what are the kind of suggestions I'd like to share with you on what you should be focusing on if you think about a career in this. Number one, you must do a lot of preparation. You must read a lot. You must, if you're looking for a particular company, study the sector it is in. Okay? It is important because at the end of the day, when you when you are looking for a job, you are the product. And if you are the product, you need to figure out how best you can sell yourself. And so everything that you do in product marketing or sales for a product that you deal with, you need to deal with yourself when you're trying to look for a career in a certain industry. The other second line that I've said is ensure you do not reach a level of incompetence too soon. You know what this means? See, one of the things that happens certainly in the technology sector is sometimes, depending on how you're performing, your growth can be very sharp. Now, it is a very nice feeling that you're going to the next level so quickly, whereas your friends in some other sector are still doing what they were doing 2 years ago. Now, that's nice, the money is good, but sometimes you reach a level of incompetence too soon. So, basically, what I'm only encouraging you to do is be patient, move with care, and move when you are completely comfortable, having learned all the different elements of the job properly when you move from one level to the next. For to be able to do that, you need to be willing to observe, you need to learn, you need to execute, because what you learn you got to execute. And finally, you need to be flexible, because the good news in an industry, in a sector which has so much change, it has so much churn, you cannot do the things today that you did yesterday. You have to be flexible. To me, the job is almost like being an entrepreneur, because you're always doing something, you're facing a new challenge every day. But if you do all this, you will build a track record. And if you build a track record, automatically recognition comes, because your competitors, your customers, they start giving you recognition. You'll find the growth I was talking about. You'll find new opportunities, because there are companies always coming into this sector. Unlike in any other sector, the number of new entrants is amongst the highest in the business. And trust me, if you are able to handle your track record right, money will follow automatically. Don't make changes for the rise of a small percentage of your salary because it feels good to your pocket or feels good to your bank account. Make sure that all this comes with it, so that you do not need anything special. People will come to you. And finally, because your job has so much international content, you need to permanently think global, and you need to act global. So, with that, I will throw this. I think it is past 4 o'clock. I suspect I've exceeded my brief in terms of time. So, I will now open it up for questions, and hopefully, I can address some of them.
So, thank you for such a lovely session. A lot of curiosity has built up, and students have put up a lot of questions for you. I'll take these questions one at a time. Sir, the first question is what you will look in a candidate when you select him or her for a sales profile.
Profile for a salesperson. Okay, that's very interesting. That's really something I've been doing for the last 35 odd years. So I hope I can give you some sense. I may not give you the answers you're expecting, because in the business of selling technology products, it is not salesmanship that is understood, let's say, in automobile sector, which is expected. There is an expectation that you should come into a meeting with your customer with a good understanding of the business of the customer. That is one. So that is why I say your MBA program is going to be extremely handy when you want to become a good salesperson. The second, so if you are able to relate, so if you were to come and do an interview with me, I would ask you to do a role play. And in the role play, I would say, okay, assume I'm the CEO of a bank. Assume you're selling this product. Now, how would you go about it? If you don't know my business as a banker, you will get no time. So let's not go into this, because Because in technology products, we often sell at a very senior level. You're not selling at a low level. When you look at FMCG, for instance, when you are working for a company like Hindustan Lever, or you're working with a company like ITC, or even a company like Procter and Gamble, when you're in sales, you are going and selling to a retailer. You're going to a bania dukan. You're going to a panwala if you are going cigarette shopping and selling. So I'm saying the kind of target customer you're dealing with is very different when you're in technology, which is why you need to be proficient in your communication, your writing, and speaking skills have to be good. And because you're dealing with senior management, you need to be self-confident. You have to be confident because let me tell you something. You know enough about your product that that your customer does not. So you should not go back feeling, "Arey, I'm talking to a managing director. He is a 40, 50, 60-year-old, and I'm a young 25-year-old. Do I say yes sir, no sir?" You do yes sir, no sir out of politeness. But when it comes to the conversation, it is to be a one-to-one adult conversation. I always emphasize, if you can talk like an adult to your customer, you are more likely to win because you suddenly become his consultant. I don't know whether I've given you a very short. So you should have technology knowledge, you should have knowledge of business, you should have good language skills, you should have persistent. You need to be persistent because the sales cycle is long. Yep, that's
Excellent,
it.
sir. Sir, very well, very well put up. I mean, it was very crisp, and I mean, uh, even if you said you will not give the answer, you have given us the answer. Sir, the next
Thank
question
you.
that I'll put across is again, it is in continuation to what you have said. One of my students is asking, Sir, I am a plain BCom
Yep.
now doing PGDM.
Yeah.
How can I unlock opportunities in high tech industry wherein today I have minimal knowledge or restricted knowledge to technology?
So my answer to him is very simple. Him or her, it could be. It could be. By the way, let me say one thing to the students that this sector also hires a lot of. So there is what I call a lot of general gender equality. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. There are a lot of jobs available. Now coming back to the specific question of a person who is with a BCom degree, he is number one spending 2 years, the next 2 years studying for his MBA. It gives him ample time to start picking up basics in of the areas he is interested in. Number one. Number two, he can take internships with companies. They will be very happy to hire people, whether it is in market research, it is in sales, it is in analyzing a market. By taking internships, you learn a lot. Then you can do your summer job. I know all MBA programs have a summer placement requirement.
Absolutely, sir.
Take a position, work towards a position with a technology company. And I'll tell you one thing. Okay? I'll give you one more piece of advice that I learned from my own experience. Summer jobs, take them dead seriously. Don't take the closest job you get, closest to your house, or closest to your, let's say, your significant other, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. That should not be your driving motivation. Go to a good company which takes training seriously. And that is where we can go offline, we can work through the institute. I can show you how to choose companies where they take training seriously. And if you do well in the training, they will ask you to come back. Let me tell you one thing, just as much as you want jobs, they want good people. And the two don't
Correct.
necessarily come in the same time.
Absolutely, sir.
So, according to me, the opportunity is for you to be created. It's not, it is there. You have to create it for yourself by molding yourself appropriately. Thank you.
Sir. Sir, the next question is, sir, after hearing your discourse, I am a bit confused. One of my students says, so do I need to learn technology or do I need to learn management? But if your answer is both, what should be the quantity?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, good, very good question. See, now I'm not aware of what that student's background is, but I'm assuming that, let us say, it's a commerce background.
Yes, sir. He is a
I'm
commerce.
just making, yeah, I'm just making
She
that
is a
assumption that
commerce graduate.
she's a
She is
commerce.
a
Excellent.
commerce graduate.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So fantastic. So now what has happened is when you go through a BCom degree, you get very familiar with accounting. You get very familiar with uh, management principles, some basic management principles. You learn some element of law. You learn
Yes.
some bit of economics. You learn a bit of statistics. Maybe I do not know what the programs today are. Now, why you need, so what the business school is teaching you is, number one, they're teaching you management technology. They're teaching you elements. What is it to be, you know, what is financial management about? What is marketing management about? What is sales management about, depending on the sector you go into, and so on. You are also learning. I do not know whether IIEBM conducts programs in management information systems, for instance, or technology. You know what is important in technology? Do they conduct programs in learning applications?
Yes, sir.
If they do, sorry,
There is a
go
sizable
ahead.
input given to students. So there is a sizable
Ex-
input given to students, and in every semester they have a very strong element of business analytics put in. Apart from we having a strong tie-up with Harvard Business School online, which delivers business analytics to them, sir.
there you go. So there is enough opportunity being given to you by the institute. You are learning the fundamentals of management technology from the institute. Now, if when you go, if you're interviewing with me for a job and I happen to be, let's say, in a software company, you would come into the interview saying that, listen, I don't understand your product at all, and that's perfectly fine. There is absolutely no issue with that, because when you're coming into a job, particularly when you're fresh out of university, people are not expecting you to be a specialist, because if you're a specialist, you would not be there. We are expecting you to be able to learn, which is why technology companies have training programs. They train you on understanding the product that you're going to be selling or dealing with, and you learn it during your induction program into the business. But if you come with a sound background of what you studied in the campus, that along with the training you learn on the products, you will get it. The attributes, I still come back to the first question: confidence, ability to articulate, ability to sell anything that you understand intimately. So to the lady, I would say there's so many things she's familiar with. Can she put it across to me confidently? If she can put it to me confidently, she can put a technology product also with a bit of learning. I hope that helps.
Sir, certainly, sir. Absolutely. So the next question is, will automation eat up jobs for management trainees or fresher students in management, sir?
Uh, this is a question that, I mean, I'm glad you're asking it, because in the past, when we were selling computers, I remember today all of you are familiar with the fact that you can go and bank with your bank without ever walking into a branch. Let me tell you, when we started selling computers to banking, the trade union leaders asked us exactly the same question, that, hey, you will bring computers into the bank, will it make me lose my job as a person who's handling the ledger? Now if you walk into any bank, the ledger still remains. There is still a front office. Now what automation does is a couple of things. It does, number one, improves your productivity. Number one, it increases your ability to handle more complex tasks. So If you ask me what do you need to worry about as a potential management trainee, is how adaptable you are, how quickly you're able to learn. So when if you were to take a job tomorrow, let's say in a bank, forget technology companies. If you take a job in the bank, the first thing you're learning is about technology there. Because without which you can't function as an employee. Whether you're sitting in the front office in the form of a role interfacing with customers, or you're sitting in the back office where you're worrying about risk, you're worrying about interest rates, you're still dealing with technology, and you need to understand technology as much as you need to understand the business. So, to answer the question, is automation going to withdraw jobs? I think it's going to change the way you do them. Ask Dr. Trivedi. The way he's doing his job today has changed because of the circumstance. Am I correct,
Very
Dr. Trivedi?
absolutely, sir. I must say, in fact, I would add to what you have said right now. I feel because nobody will ask me a question, I always being on the other side of the table, but I would take this opportunity and I would add that my job today has been refined, has improved, has augmented because of technology getting at the center of it. Now I feel much more in command. Now I feel much more capable. And now I feel much more confident and not worried.
So to the student who asks that question, I'll say, hey, don't ask me these questions. Dr. Trivedi has a far more practical response to it. And everything that you said is right.
So,
Any more
sir,
questions?
sir, I have only last two questions for you.
Sure,
Uh,
sure.
uh, so, what are your views on blockchain?
That is one. I'm not completely familiar with the technology because I'm not dealing with it right now. But that's no excuse. What blockchain is doing is basically going to change the way it is what I call it. See, this is the interesting thing about the high tech space. There is always a new technology that comes that completely changes the game. Blockchain is really one in that space. Now, let me answer this question by answering the concept of a field that I was very familiar with. Okay. I
Sir,
hope it clarifies the answer indirectly. Now,
okay.
for instance, I worked for many years with the company that invented Java. I think a lot of you are familiar with Java, not maybe as a language, but maybe as something you use. Okay. Now, let me explain to you what the problem definition was that time and what Java did and why it was what I call a game changer. See, today, when you think about if any one of your students wants to become a software entrepreneur, he wants to write there are a lot of youngsters who write games. Games is a lucrative market.
Yes,
Now,
yes, sir.
when you write games, the game has to run somewhere. It has to run on an Apple phone. It has to run on an Android phone. Maybe it has to run on a laptop. It could be you may want to run it at many places. So when you think about developing today, the language in the past before Java arrived, life was very simple. Oh, sorry, the other way around. The life was far more complicated because you had to say, okay, do I develop it on this or do I develop it on that? And by doing this, you are restricting the market that you're going to address. Today, what happened when Java came? Java was like a universal plug that you put into your wall socket. You put the universal plug. Once you start traveling, you realize the problem of a plug. Because the plugs in America, the plugs in England, the plugs in India, the plugs in Africa, plugs in Australia are all different. So when you travel, you really suffer. Same thing used to happen for software developers till Java arrived. Java was like a universal plug. You write in Java, it didn't matter where. Now, it was a game changer. Blockchain is a game changer. I'm not addressing more because I don't think I'm competent enough to give you a proper answer in that area.
Absolutely, sir. We completely respect your honest submission to this. And in fact, what sir has very clearly said and very rightly informed us, Sun Microsystems, Java, and you are hearing it from the horse's mouth, my dear friends, children. Sir has been instrumental, sir has been at the helm of such a transformation. So information technology, high tech, it is not about having long hairs or black hairs, it is also about salt and pepper. My last question to you will be, sir, what will be the function of sales post COVID-19?
See, the function of sales will be exactly what the function of sales always has been. Somebody has to bring the revenue, and the salespeople bring the revenue. Now, what will change in the post COVID space is not the role, the role will remain. What will change is the way you do it. Now, if I'm if I want to sell a piece of education software to IIEBM, in the past I would take an appointment with Dr. Trivedi or Dr. Marwa or all of them together, ask them to request me. I would request them to give me time. I would say, can we take a meeting in your conference room? And then I would make a presentation and I'd give you a demonstration of what I can do. That is what I would do. What will I do today? I'll do exactly what we are doing just now. I would say, hey, Dr. Trivedi, can I get myself on your calendar? Can I also get on the calendar of Dr. Marwa? Can we find time together? I need 45 minutes. I will give you a presentation. I'll give you a demonstration using the internet. I can demonstrate the most complex forms of software using the internet. I'll give you another example. Do you know that there is the world of what is called robotic surgery?
So,
Now, robotic surgery is done today with some of the most sensitive and minute procedures. So, robotic surgery is done using computers and robots. So, in reality, the surgeon is not in the physical proximity of the patient. He or she is sitting in a little room or a cabin somewhere with a computer and a set of devices, just the way you and I are sitting in right now. And this and the entire system has a lot of what shall we call safety built into it. I was going to use some technical word, but I'm avoiding that. A lot of safety built into it so that if I, as a doctor, are surgically operating on a patient, I'm able to do it without actually working on the patient's body directly. And I have safeguards that the system is doing. Now, the same thing can be done to sell. I don't need to I don't need to be there. I don't need to do something to be able to sell. So if you ask me the role has not changed. The way you do it will change. And depending on the kind of product category, it will change completely. For instance, when I was young, I would sell a PC by visiting you personally. Today, nobody comes to you to sell a PC personally. You go to an online retailer like Amazon. You choose something, you click, you pay, and the box comes home. But if you are buying a system to do robotic surgery, which is also technology, you don't do it that way. You want to look at it, you want to see it, even if it's through the internet. You need to see specialists, you need to talk to references. The same process. So selling doesn't change. I don't. It sounds simplistic, but it is really the job hasn't changed. The way you do it is different. Tools are there, technology is there.
absolutely, sir. Sir, these were the questions. That was the last question I asked you. Sir, I would take this opportunity to thank you for your time and words of wisdom. You have not only shared the reality, but also given us insight into high tech industries and how a student from non engineering background can also tomorrow have a wonderful career going ahead. Your experiences will help us in making our young community the bright professionals of tomorrow. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add a small message for all the students
Sir,
that I said that should any of you have any follow up questions or doubts, or now or in the next 2 to 3 months,
sir,
please feel free to raise the issues via Dr. Trivedi. I'll be more than happy to address, because I think learning is asking questions. That's the way you need to go forward. Okay?
certainly, sir.
Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.